Tom Fishburne is the founder of Marketoonist, a content marketing agency focused on what else? Cartoons. That means he gets to draw funny pictures for a living for the likes of Google, IBM, and Vodafone. Congratulations, Tom. We are officially jealous. Please welcome to the stage, Tom Fishburne.
You're hearing about some amazing social tools to drive engagement. What I want to talk about today is the mindset that we need to have as marketers to fully take advantage of all of those tools. I think there's never been a better time in history to work in marketing when you think about it. We literally have our audiences juggling devices. All of these are potential ways to get in front of our audiences. Every week it seems like there's some new technology that comes along that allows us to connect with these audiences in ways that were never possible before. But I think sometimes the mindset for marketing hasn't quite caught up to these tools, and we have conversations that sound a bit like this. What's the big campaign idea? We're going digital. Facebook, YouTube, a mobile app, Pinterest. What are we going to do in all those channels? I don't know, we'll figure it out later. And it's that I'll figure it out later that I think that I want to talk about today. Because with the right marketing mindset, we can fully take advantage of what's available. But when that's not there, we've all experienced as consumers when that falls down. This subway has no internet access, but that won't stop us from asking you to scan the QR code in this ad. If you've ever seen the QR code on a billboard on the side of the highway, or on the side of a moving bus, as if somebody's going to walk down the street and suddenly take out their phone and chase the bus down the street and scan the QR code, and likely what they'll finally get is a website that's not optimized for mobile. I feel like that's where we are today. We're in the awkward adolescence of digital marketing, where all of these tools are suddenly available, but the mindset hasn't quite caught up. Here's this poor guy sleeping, and his phone's buzzing, buzzes again, finally wakes him up. Having trouble sleeping? $5 off nighttime sleep aid liquid caps. I think my Nest smoke alarm is going off. Google AdWords just pitched me a fire extinguisher and an offer for temporary housing. And then the classic marketing funnel. Do whatever drives the most traffic, like listicles about cats. Relentlessly harass them with marketing automation. Trick them with a bait-and-switch offer. And then hope they promote your brand to all their friends. And so this awkward adolescence, I think, is an issue. And I think that it's an exciting time for brands that can think on the other side of this. But you can't simply take the latest and greatest and get people to think that you're a social brand because you're embracing the tools when your actual fundamental experience is not necessarily worth sharing. But the exciting thing is that when you have this mindset, here's an example, two people sitting, they're surrounded by paid media from brands with big budget advertising, and he's saying, I'll have what she's having. And it's that I'll have what she's having moment that I think is available to all of us. That's available to every brand. But without the right marketing mindset, we're not going to get there. If we have the right marketing mindset, we can punch harder than our weight. And so what I want to talk about today are three aspects of that marketing mindset. And I'm going to use cartoons and also some case studies of brands that I think have embraced this marketing mindset. But first, a little sidebar in my background, because I do have an unusual background for a cartoonist. My cartooning started at a pretty young age. I'm not sure how popular Silly Putty is all over the world, but when I was growing up, this was my favorite thing to do. It's basically a putty that lets you take a cartoon strip in the newspaper and then transfer it to a fresh sheet of paper. And then I used to erase the dialogue and change all the words to basically make fun of my older brother. And so as a kid, I realized the power of cartoons. I grew up with these three guys as my heroes. That's Bill Watterson from Calvin and Hobbes, Gary Larson from Far Side, and Berkeley Breathitt from Bloom County. They were my heroes as a kid as cartoonists. But all three of them quit cartooning entirely the year that I went to college, that I graduated from college in 1995. And so I put aside the dream of becoming a cartoonist, and instead, in that year, I actually moved to Prague. I moved to Prague at age 22, and I lived here for a year. I joined a small group of people starting one of the first English language magazines and newspapers in Prague. I had an amazing adventure starting my marketing career here, but the most exciting thing was that I met my future wife, who was an American like me visiting Prague. And as a result, this city is a very special place. I proposed to her in Prague a few years later, and a few years ago, we brought our children here to visit Prague, and it's an amazing experience for me to be here this week with her, walking around this beautiful city. So it's a real dream to be here. So I picked up cartooning again at a very unusual place, Harvard Business School. I started drawing cartoons about student life in Harvard Business School. And I realized that cartoons could capture some of the inside jokes of this small audience of students. And I started realizing the power, really, of content to connect. This was in 2000. When I graduated from business school, I didn't have a student newspaper anymore, and I decided to work in marketing. I went to General Mills, a big American food company. I later worked at Dreyer's, which is now part of Nestle. And then I worked at Method, which is a environmentally friendly cleaning products company and a brand. I was chief marketing officer at an app called Hotel Tonight. And all along my marketing career, I drew a weekly cartoon about my life. It was basically a way to get some of the stress off my shoulders. But I started to realize that some of the engagement that I was seeing as a cartoonist was exactly the engagement that I wanted to see as a marketer. And so 7 years ago, my wife and I decided to start a small firm that basically creates content marketing campaigns using cartoons. And now we work with a variety of cartoonists from the New Yorker and other places and basically help brands like Google and IBM tell their stories with cartoons. And we've been doing this for the last 7 years. So I give that background largely because it's distilled a philosophy that I have as a marketer, which is that the best marketing doesn't feel like marketing. And I think we all know what it feels like to be marketed to. And when we use social tools for traditional marketing, it can very easily fall flat. So I want to share 3 ideas for you, ways to think about marketing and think about that mindset of marketing. The first idea is the idea that Don Draper is no longer in charge. And I really miss Mad Men going off the air. As a marketer, it was such an experience to see how marketing operated in that time. My very first marketing job was with Green Giant, a large, kind of listed as one of the top advertising icons of the last century. And when I arrived at my desk to work on Green Giant, I literally found a creative brief written by a young Leo Burnett. And it was amazing to me to see how they viewed marketing at that time, how they thought about the audience at that time. And one of the fundamental assumptions they had in that time was that you had a captive audience. And that's how I was trained in marketing, that you had a captive audience. In the early days of marketing in the United States, you only had 3 television stations. And basically, you could control your message. It was a command and control mindset for marketing. And when I joined Green Giant, they still assumed that that was the case. And I think sometimes marketers still make that assumption. But the problem is, and they would do what Seth Godin refers to as the TV industrial complex. You basically repeat your message over and over again and want it to resonate with your audience. But the problem is we now live in a world like this. Your ad ignored here. Just as there's never been a better time in history to connect with our audiences, it's never been easier for your audience to tune out everything you want to say to them and completely ignore you. I read that the average consumer has a lower attention span than a goldfish. Sorry, did you say something? This pair is so perfect, I can't wait to buy them cheaper online somewhere. What's your Wi-Fi password? There's not even a captive audience when they're literally in your store. We learned to speak your language, so your generation will finally start to pay attention to our ads. And it responds with a middle finger. And so ultimately, that has fundamentally changed. Marketing looks much more like this, and Don Draper doesn't know how to thrive in a world like this. Every one of these nodes and touch points are ways that people discover your brands. So Nutella is a brand a lot of people love. This guy obviously loves Nutella. There was a woman in Italy named Sarah Rosso that on her own decided to start World Nutella Day. She set up a Facebook page. She tried to collect recipes, asking people to send in pictures. This guy sent in a picture. What do you think the parent company of Nutella did when they found out about her? They sent a cease and desist letter, basically telling her they were going to sue her if she didn't immediately cease her activities. What a missed opportunity. I think it's a reflection of that mindset change that brands want to own the brand. They said it wasn't the right font, not the right tone of voice for the brand. And I think that's a reflection of where we are. I support word-of-mouth marketing just as long as we tightly control exactly what they say. Here's another example. How many of you have been to the American state of Kentucky by any chance? A couple of you. So every state in the United States has a tourism bureau. They all want people to visit their state. Kentucky decided to invest in a brand platform, and they finally came up with 2 words, unbridled spirit, to represent what their brand stands for. They set up a Facebook page, tried to get people to talk about that, and nobody did. And along come these 2 guys. So these 2 guys happen to work in advertising, and they live in the state of Kentucky, and they thought unbridled spirit was kind of lame. If you Google unbridled spirit, you get a horse ranch in Texas. So these 2 guys, on their own, decided that they were going to rebrand the state of Kentucky. They came up with a platform they liked a lot better than unbridled spirit, and then they set out to discover what that meant. They went out and started interviewing people, engaging with people, all these people describing what Kentucky means to them. The guy in the bottom right, his job title is Turtle Man. I don't know what that means, but he had a point of view on Kentucky. They started creating media. In Kentucky, there are more barrels of bourbon than there are people. It got people talking about Kentucky. But what do you think the tourism department thought of these guys? We certainly would not sanction or endorse that phraseology. These guys are Kentucky natives, and they love the state, but they have a different constituency, which is no one. The internet loves statements like that. And these guys ran with it. Regardless of what Kentucky's tourism department says, we're rebranding the state. A grassroots movement has taken place, driven by proud Kentuckians, the internet's plural, and a little social media. And that's, I think, what marketing often looks like today, right? And which of these do you think is most exciting? That's an incredible force for good, but it terrifies brands. We crowdsourced our financial services ad on the internet. Brands think if they give away the power of their brand, it's going to end up as total chaos. Everything on the internet ultimately ends up as a cat, after all. But ultimately, I feel like it's not that. It's ultimately, I think, about a question of, is your marketing fundamentally worth sharing at the start? Does it recognize that there is a shift in power between the brand owners owning their brand and the end consumers owning their brand? Second idea I want to share with you is the idea that technology can't save boring marketing, but it can amplify remarkable marketing. And as marketers, we often get so excited about the latest technology. We get obsessed with the latest tool. We need to stay focused on our marketing priorities and not get distracted by every shiny new, look, squirrel. And that's what we do. Tell us again how Snapchat will help our brand sell more term life insurance? But ultimately, when it's about the latest technology, we miss the big picture, which is that if you don't have the right mindset, the latest technology tool, social media, whatever, will be no more effective than a fax machine. And I think brands miss that. I want to share one of my favorite marketing examples, which I think embraces this mindset, yet is decidedly low tech. Jan talked about the importance of being social first. This is a social first idea that first occurred before there was social media. I know most of you know the Innocent brand. I discovered them when I moved to London a few years ago. But I couldn't figure out when I first saw the brand why they were wearing hats. And I was mystified by that as a marketer. All the brands were wearing hats. And I realized that if you bought a smoothie bottle at full price, you would get a little hat, and then 25p would go to this organization called Age UK that provided heating oil for the elderly in the winter. And I thought, what an amazing exercise. They're not just giving money off its shelf, they're actually giving this thing of value, and it's for a good cause. And then I discovered that the hats were actually knitted by their own consumers. They had people knitting hats by the truckload, shipping them into their offices to execute this promotion. Think about the last time you tried to drive some engagement off of a social campaign, some activation off of a social campaign that involved them just filling in a form or something. They were actually getting people to knit. And at the time they started this campaign, they did it with nothing more sophisticated than an email newsletter. And that, you couldn't get more low-tech if you tried. You have knitting and the elderly. But yet this is exactly social first. And when the tools came on, this is so Pinterest ready before they discovered Pinterest. But as the tools came on, they've built on that idea, taken it to be social first, and expanded it into this amazing platform that's been incredibly successful. It's not about doing digital marketing, it's about marketing effectively in a digital world. The third and last idea I want to share with you is the idea of making your customers awesome, which I think is an important filter. And it comes from a software engineer that I follow named Kathy Sierra. It does not matter how awesome your product is or your communication is, your awesome thing matters only to the extent that it helps the user's ability to be a little more awesome. And you think about a lot of social media strategies, like us so we can tell you how awesome we are. We are awesome, we are awesome, we are awesome. Awesome deal, help our awesome video go viral. But far too few is the how can we help you be more awesome? And I want to close with an example of a brand that has embraced this. This is a fashion brand out of San Francisco called Beta Brand. They're a tiny brand. They're competing against brands with far deeper pockets. And they decided that they were going to really differentiate themselves by making their clothing entirely about the user experience and the engagement. They describe themselves as 1% fashion, 99% fiction. Everything they make has a story behind them. And they launch at least one new product every single week. More recently, they've started to crowdsource even the ideas of their clothes. So these are a pair of pants they sell right before American Thanksgiving, and they're called the Gluttony Pants, and they have extra buttons to make more room for your big Thanksgiving dinner. The Gluttony Pants did well, so they followed it up with they decided to make an article of clothing for each of the 7 deadly sins. This is the Lust skirt made out of disco ball material. They made the Envy Pants, only one pair they made, and they put it on eBay on auction model. So you could be the only one with this pair of trousers. These are called the Preposterously Patriotic Pants, which they followed up with the Caperin. These are bicycle pants. They fold out the back pockets like trucker mud flaps, so you can have reflective when you're going. When everybody was talking about Mark Zuckerberg wearing a hoodie for his IPO roadshow, they launched the Executive Hoodie. And everything is a way for people to engage with their story. This woman's dress looks pretty innocuous, but when you zoom up, you realize that it's made of the poo emoji. This is basically social media in a clothing brand. And that entirely built their brand because people are talking about the clothes. Not just about the clothes, but what it says about them. And they recognize this. They completely re-engineered their website to reward people for sending in pictures of themselves wearing these clothes. Because they know if this guy looks like he's on this website wearing a Red Devil smoking jacket, he's going to share that with all of his friends. And ultimately, the entire brand was built through engagement and people sharing it with other people. Not about what it says about the brand, but ultimately because it makes them feel a little more awesome. This guy is skydiving into Burning Man, made more amazing because he's wearing these pants made out of disco ball material. And made even more amazing because Beta Brand provided a channel for him to share this picture with the world, showing his own awesomeness. But ultimately, it brings the Beta brand along for the ride. And I think this is exactly what we need to aspire to as marketers, getting these types of moments and connection. Careful, the last content was full of marketing. With that, I want to close and say thank you so much for having me. It's been so great to be here.